The Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information. The Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Dr. Casson Troop, our Chief Education Officer, acting. Our Deputy Chief Education Officers, our Regional Directors, Dr. Wayne Wesley, Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Examinations Council and other officers from the Council, Mr. Jasford Gabriel, President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mr. Hector Stevenson, Executive Director of the Overseas Examinations Commission and other members of the Commission, Mrs. Marva Duncanson, Regional Representative from City and Guilds and other officers of City and Guilds, Mrs. Marva White, Director, Examinations Department from the National Council on Technical Vocational Education and Training and other officers from the NCTVET, principals and teachers of primary and secondary schools, education officers, parents, guardians, students, education stakeholders, good evening. Let me use this opportunity on behalf of our Minister, the Honorable Favour Williams, to extend a very special welcome to you as we engage you in our virtual town hall meeting, where the focus is going to be on our exit examinations at the secondary level. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry is about engagement of our stakeholders, ensuring that we provide you with the information that is required, and also ensuring that we take your comments, your feedback, just to see how best we can refine the programs that we have internally to serve you better. So we are indeed happy for the opportunity this evening to be exchanging or having dialogue with you as we focus on our exit examinations. And just to remind you, our exit examinations at the secondary level are our CAPE exams, our CSEC exams, our City and Guilds exams, and the National Qualification of Jamaica exams, as well as the Caribbean Vocational Qualification. So these are the exams that we currently have organized for our students to sit. So ladies and gentlemen, since this evening belongs to you, we are going to make our speeches just brief. Only our minister will be speaking, and then we will open the floor for your questions, your comments, and engagement in this dialogue. So at this time, I now invite our minister, the Honorable Favour Williams, to do her address. Over to you, Minister.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Grace McLean, our Acting Permanent Secretary. Let me stand on the protocols that you have just established, but just to say a special welcome to Dr. Wayne Wesley, Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of Caribbean Examinations Council and other officers of the CSEC. Of course, let me recognize Mr. Gabriel, President of Jamaica Teachers Association and other officers of the JTA, and also Mr. Hector Stevenson, Executive Director, Overseas Examination Commission, and all the officers of the Commission, and Mrs. Marva Duncanson from City and Guilds. Of course, I could not omit Mrs. Marva White from the National Council on Technical and Vocational Education, all the members from the Ministry of Education, parents, guardians, students, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this virtual town hall meeting this afternoon, which we have arranged to answer your questions about this year's sitting of CSEC and CAPE, as well as the status of City and Guilds. We know that there has been much concern, a lot of anxiety. We've been getting the questions. We've been hearing the conversations on, we've been seeing what persons have been writing in social media and so on. And so we thought we'd organize this to bring everyone together so that we give you information that's consistent, that's useful, that you can use, and you have a chance to ask questions and not, and to get the answers for yourself. So this afternoon, we're going to allow most of the afternoon for your questions. We have our Chief Education Officer here as well, Dr. Troop, and together all of us can respond to your many questions. Additionally, I know that I'd like you to know that we did petition CXC after having just gotten lots of letters, phone calls about the SBAs. We asked for an extension of the deadline for the submission of school-based assessment. I know Dr. Wesley's on, and he will go into more details about it. But suffice it to say that CXC has allowed a rolling submission. I'm going to read the sentence so I don't get it wrong. It says, at this stage, given the challenges, CXC will facilitate a phased submission of SBAs. That is, the submission deadline of June 18 be retained for the research subjects, while submissions for the practical subjects be submitted on June 30th. No penalty will be attached to the extension. So it's further to the above, it would be imperative that there be a rolling submission of SBAs to CXC. That is, as soon as SBAs are completed for any given subject, the submission must be made immediately by respective centers to avoid a bottleneck towards the deadline date of June 30th. But I will allow Dr. Wesley, when he speaks, to speak to that some more. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our PS and moderator for the afternoon.
Okay, so thank you very much, Minister. And ladies and gentlemen, our students, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and also on Zoom. So while you perhaps may just be seeing our Minister, our Chief Education Officer, and myself, we have all the other technical experts who are currently on Zoom and who will be available to respond to your questions as well. So I know that the numbers are growing and the questions have actually started to come in. Minister, we had a town hall for PEP, but I believe that's where the questions have started. And so a parent is asking, can PEP parents be told how the assessments will be weighted? And also, when will the placements be ready?
Okay. Dr. Chu?
Dr. Chu.
Okay. Good afternoon, PS and members of the public, of course, Minister. We did, as PS alluded earlier, we did indicate that at our last PEP conference that we have to, talk to our parents about what is happening with the preparation of PEP, we did indicate at that time that we are going through the process with our psychometricians to make sure that the weighting is fair to all our students. And I'm reassuring my parents again that you need not worry. We have the experience in this process. We did it last year, and all our students were successfully placed. And so we're asking you to trust us to just complete the activity on May 26th, and then we will do further work with our psychometrician to come up with the best approach to place our boys and girls. So we are asking you for some more time as we apply the science to the process to make sure that it's equitable, it's fair, it's reliable and valid. And of course, like in all the other years, if there's a parent who is not satisfied, we always make time for the parents to come and view the papers, view how it is scored, and for yourself to be satisfied that the best decision was taken in the interest of your child.
And the results, Dr. Chu?
We are working towards the last week in June as promised. That's consistent with how we would have released the results last year. And all our activities are on track for us to release in the last week of June.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Troop. So, Minister, I'm now going to turn over to Chantal. I believe there are some questions on Zoom.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Glenroy Davis, you can go ahead. Glenroy? Glenroy Davis? Okay, we'll go ahead with the two. Marissa Rainford. Marissa, please unmute your mic. Okay, Suzette Ellis Michelle.
Good afternoon. Will CSEC between both papers?
Yes. And actually, I think it would be a good thing for us to invite Dr. Wayne Wesley just to say a few words, and maybe he could speak to the letter that we received today with regards to the SBAs. Dr. Wesley?
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Is he still on mute?
Mr. Wesley?
Good afternoon, Minister. How are you doing?
We're hearing you.
And okay, very good. I don't know what happened there. The unmute came up and then I disappeared and came back on. So I don't know. So trust you're hearing me now. So good afternoon again, all. The Caribbean Examinations Council is pleased to be a part of this town hall meeting organized by the Ministry of Education. As pointed out by the Honorable Minister, we did respond to a correspondence sent to us regarding SBAs. So I just want to indicate that yes, we would have given some consideration to the extension of the deadline for the SBA as it relates to CSEC subjects, particularly the practical subjects that require persons to be in school or within a school environment to complete. There are also some other points of concern that we would have outlined in that letter as it relates to. You're not hearing me? The mic needs to be turned up. Well, my mic is all the way to the top, so I'm not quite sure. Okay, right. So there are some other points which we raised for those SBAs that are of a research nature and can be completed within the time frame. We would encourage those, once they're completed, to be uploaded to help with the concern about all SBAs coming in at the same time because an extension is given. So we look at that phase approach and trust that it will assist in alleviating the concerns being raised as it relates particularly to those practical subjects that require a face-to-face kind of activity. And we're talking about like industrial technology and home economics and those areas, the sciences that would require students to be in school to get those labs completed. And so we look at that particular phase approach. This is likely to have some impact on our processing capabilities because delaying some of those subjects until the end of the month will have some impact on the processing of those, and it will likely impact what we'll obtain as it relates to the final grades being prepared and released on time. But we are hoping that if we follow through with those SBAs that are completed early enough to start the process of submission so that we don't all wait until the 30th of June and then create a bottleneck now that creates other logistical challenges in terms of getting the results out on time. As it relates to paper 1, paper 2, yes, persons are required. The examinations will be administered using paper 1 and paper 2, and so persons are required to do both papers. I think those were the two questions I saw there, Minister. The deferral process is still there for persons up until the 1st of January, not January, the 1st of May, to indicate their desire to defer, and how that is managed is still, the deadline for that is May 1 actually. Are there any other issue that I failed to address there?
Dr. Wesley, there are some
Right.
questions. There are some questions in the chat. Chantal, you could just question specifically relating to CXC that you could just read for Dr. Wesley to respond.
Right.
Well,
I do have the senior manager with me for exam administration and security as well. So some of those questions I'll ask him to address if there's a need to.
Okay. Go ahead, Chantal.
so the question is about the deferred subjects. When should we submit the SBA?
About the different subjects, when you said about
Persons who are deferring.
Oh, deferral. Oh, deferral. If you are deferring, there's no need to worry about the deadline for June 30th. That deadline is for those who are writing the exams this year. For those who are deferring, you have up until, I think it is October 30, and in fact, some persons might opt to do the paper 3-2 that is offered in January, and so that will also give them an opportunity to do those SBAs as a paper 3-2, which is a written form of that particular SBA. But they would have up until about October or November thereabout. I can't remember the exact date. Teddy, well, you might not be in the meeting. Let me just get that date from my listing here and let you know.
Okay.
But they don't have to worry about submitting their SBAs at the end of June. Those SBA submission for the deferral is in October, and if they decide to do the paper 3-2 in January when the exam is being offered, then that can also be done.
So I see another question there, Chantal, in the chat about when will the broad topics be presented. I think there are a few questions, Dr. Wesley, that your technical officer could actually respond, some technical questions in the chat that he could actually respond to in
so
writing.
Are those questions shared with all, so he's seeing them at the same time? I mean,
yes,
maybe
they would be on the Zoom.
They might be moving. Yeah,
yes,
he's on the Zoom.
Yeah, they would be on the Zoom platform.
So
okay.
The question is, stakeholders were told by the Caribbean Examination Council that broad topics are to be covered on CSEC paper number 2 would be disseminated to the various ministers of education 5 weeks before exam. Clearly, this did not refer to the 5 weeks before June, as the date was Monday. Another potential interpretation is that they will be disseminated 5 weeks before June 14th, the first written paper. When will these topics be sent to us?
Oh, we have indicated that those topics will be shared on the 10th of May. We have always maintained that they will actually go to the ministry a little before that, maybe by the 11th or, sorry, maybe by the 9th or so, but it will be submitted to the ministry in time for it to be released to the public by the 10th, or to the schools by the 10th of May. That's the date we have always indicated. And simultaneously, it will be available on our website as well.
Okay, there's another question. Will CXC be face-to-face or online?
Well, if a country is prepared for electronic testing, we will oblige in that regard, but certainly we are looking at all this as a face-to-face administration.
And I noticed that Teddy is responding to some of the questions in the chat already, so that is good.
Yes, he just told me he's responding, so okay, good.
Yes, yes. So,
all right, Teddy, go ahead.
So, Dr. Wesley?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. I'm sure there are other questions that will be coming up, so we ask you to remain. We are grateful that you are here with us this evening, sir. We are going to invite equally Mrs. Marva Duncanson and Mrs. Marva White to just give a brief update in terms of the examinations that you are responsible for. So, Mrs. Duncanson, can you please unmute Marva Duncanson? And we ask you just to give us a brief update on the City and Guilds examinations.
Good evening, Honorable Minister, PS, CEO. I greet everyone and wish to thank you very much for this opportunity to share some information about our City and Guilds exam protocol for 2021. We have been able to register 20,000 students. Roughly 17,000 are grade 11 students and the others are grade 12 students. Our exams, after meeting with ministry that were originally scheduled for June, have been postponed to give our students the opportunity for a better level of preparation. So we have agreed with ministry for Monday, the 9th of August. That's right after our cultural celebrations of independence and emancipation, for math and English. Our administration will be face-to-face. There is no provision at this point for electronic delivery. In an attempt to help our students to prepare with the full understanding that this has been a very difficult period, disruptive not only to students, but to teachers, parents, indeed all the stakeholders. So we have, between yesterday and today, we have provided broad topics, as had been agreed with ministry, to all our schools who are participating. City and Guilds is providing some options around an actual assessment for students who might not be able to write exams on exam day for any reason. So we're offering what we're calling the teacher-assessed grading or deferral to 2022. The teacher-assessed grading will be heavily based on evidence, and we would not wish to see it used as a general practice, really, because it will be incumbent on teachers to provide a high level of internal grading. Over the course of the last couple of months, we have provided 2 mock papers, and we have invited our educators to use these. These are papers that were taken from the City and Guilds exam bank, and they had never been previously given in Jamaica. So we have invited our educators to use these 2 in an attempt to be able to provide reliable grades in the event that they need to resort to teacher-assessed grading. We had a particularly difficult time last year with the calculated grading, where many educators were hesitant, almost reluctant to provide a grade that was based on a prediction of how a student would perform had they been given the chance to write. So I do not think that this is something that many schools, many teachers will be opting for this year, but it is an option. And we will be providing full training around that over the next few weeks, certainly into the end of May. And I believe that about wraps it up. Yes?
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Duncanson. And as we see questions referring to City and Guilds, we will advise accordingly. Mrs. Marva White? Mrs. White, please unmute.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me. With me, I have members of the management team, and so if needs be, I will call upon them. All right, we will speak briefly to the assessment strategy for the NCTVET exam. I am pleased to inform everyone that we have received applications for over 16,000 candidates, this year. Approximately 50% would represent the levels 1 candidates and the other half for level 2. Now, in light of the COVID pandemic, we made sure that we revise our strategy to meet the needs of our customers. So we have done several things. One, instead of administering practical assessment as usual, knowing that our philosophy is competency-based, we have decided to revise that and instead administer projects or assign projects. Regardless of the projects, regardless of the fact that they are projects, they all align to the competency-based philosophy. These projects we have already disseminated to institutions, and we have given a reasonable timeline for completion. In addition to that, we have also extended to our customers the opportunity to differ their candidates. We started last year, June, with the June 2020 sit-in, where candidates who were not ready to sit the exam in June were allowed to differ those candidates to another cycle. So we have 2 other sit-in in November as well as February at no extra cost to them. Similar.
Mrs. White, we have lost you. Okay, so as soon as she's able to reconnect. Now, Minister, there are some other questions that are coming up. I think no matter the sessions that we have, our PEP students and their parents are still quite anxious. So there are a few PEP questions, Minister. One, will the grade 6 students will the grade 6 students be going face-to-face before the sitting of the exams? And there's another one, Minister, where the CSEC students are asking when will they be allowed to go into their schools to complete their practicals?
Well, that's a question that's on everybody's minds. I just want to say, to remind persons that we are in a health crisis, and so we have to be guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And they have indicated to us that schools should revert online. They haven't yet made a change in that decision. So as soon as we hear anything further, we will let you know. We keep in very close conversation, in very close touch with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We, of course, are still impressing on them the anxieties, the concerns of all the parents and students. And I'm sure they are taking that into consideration. But again, we are in a health crisis, and we have to always be mindful of that. I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific than that this afternoon, but you know that as soon as we get more information, we will let you know.
Thank you,
Dr.
Minister.
Troop,
I think that's good, Minister.
There are 2 PEP questions, Minister, that Dr. Troop could respond to. One, what will happen to PEP students who have not been able to access the online platforms?
Wow. Well, as we know, it has really been a very difficult time, PS, for our boys and girls. We are conscious of the limitations that our parents face with respect to the technology, and so we continue to work with our principals and our parents to make sure that the other modalities are accessible. If you follow our promotions on our website, if you follow the bulletins that we send out, we have an active television station that is solely dedicated to PEP and our primary level education program. So our e-homeschool network is available, and it's accessible on, I think, 23 different cable channels. And our parents, we are encouraging you, if you are limited by the technology, the alternative methods are also very good options to explore. We're also aware that many of our parents are in touch with our teachers via their WhatsApp groups and so forth. And so we're encouraging parents to stay in touch and to just capitalize on the opportunities. We know that the ideal situation is really to have the boys and girls in the face-to-face. But as our minister just said, we are working assiduously with the Ministry of Health. There's a national crisis at stake. And the decision was taken to keep everybody safe. And we really want all our boys and girls to be safe at this time. So we are prepared to make sure that the learning kits continue to be available. They are online. We can print. We have been printing. They can be picked up, parents, from the schools. And we can work with you to look at where you prefer for them to be dropped off. And we are committed as a Ministry of Education to make sure that you can access these learning materials. We also started, as you know, the mobile intervention. For these particular cases, again, we have been limited because of the spike. As soon as we are able to move past this crisis, we again will re-engage with this activity to make sure that we can help our boys and girls to do their best at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Troop. And another PEP question. Will the grade 4 and 5 students be doing PEP this year?
Minister? For the most part, and we had communicated to our school leaders some time ago that we were being guided by what is happening with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we were deliberating to see what would be the best decision at this point in time. We still stand guided, but we have proposed dates that we are working with, and we would have communicated some dates already to our schools. And since the spike and the changes with respect to the disruption in our face-to-face instruction that we started, we have actually selected some new dates in June. So we have moved the exam for PEP 5 and PEP 4 to way in June to make sure that adequate time can be provided for the performance task to be done and in a fair manner. So yes, as it is now, the decision is that there will be a PEP 4 and a PEP 5 in June. And I think PS the June for the PEP 5, it is June 15th and 16th. And for PEP 4, it is June 29th and 30th. Those are the dates we are working with. But as you know, we are in a fluid situation. We are guided by what is happening with the pandemic. But those are the dates that we are working with at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Troop. I'll go over to Chantal.
Yes, we have Cheryl Sims. Please unmute your mic. Cheryl? Okay, we'll move to Claudine Barron. Claudine, please unmute your mic. Claudine, go ahead. Your mic is unmuted.
Good evening. My question is practically, I have two students. One is doing PEP and the other is doing CSEC. I'm a little bit frustrated more with my daughter who's going to be doing this CSEC because she's doing home economics. So she's doing foods. And I find that I prepare the dates when they give me to get the products for her to go in and do the job, but then the date is gone and then the products are being expired and I have to be keeping on getting these products. So I think that we should be able to find a date or do something to assist, especially those children who are doing foods where they have to buy the stuff.
Minister.
Yes, it's a school schedule. Okay. Mommy, I do understand what you're saying. I know that we have had some changes. I think what had happened is that whilst we had the face-to-face minister and Mommy, there would have been some scheduled dates for the practicals to be done. It has to be something that is externally moderated, so the external assessors would be there and the internal assessors would be there to observe and to grade the students. And so, yes, you would have been required to purchase some items in preparation for that. But because of the sudden decision that was taken, the parent, our principals and teachers would not have been able to be faithful to that date that they would have given you prior to. And so we have been going through some changes. As you heard earlier from our registrar of CXC, opportunities will be created for additional time to be given for our students to complete these assessments. However, we will continue to work with our schools. I understand your challenge. We will talk to our schools to listen to what is happening with our individual students in respect to what you have just shared with us, that you would have procured some items and, I mean, they're actually going to be spoiled now. We would look to see what can happen at the school level to grant further support. It is for all our students to do well, and as a Ministry of Education, it is our mantra to give the directives and the resources to our principals and school leaders to support our boys and girls. So, Mommy, I'm going to reassure you, please speak to your principal, just outline what your concerns are, and I know our principals will speak to our regional directors and we will provide them with guidance. If it is that additional support is needed to support you to get the resources that you need at the appointed time, we will try to work with you because we do understand the challenges at this time.
Yes, yes. So, Dr. Wesley, I hope you're still on. I will ask controls to just unmute. I think we need to just provide some further clarity regarding the CXC exams. There are still questions that are coming in relating to whether or not the SBA will be done for this year, the actual start date of the CXC exams, just as would have been articulated by City and Guilds, further clarity as to when the results will be released. And also there's one person who is saying they still believe that CXC needs to do something more because the challenges have been real this year and they just do not think that we should be administering the exams in the way we are this year. So maybe you could emphasize the deferral arrangements and the support that we are prepared to provide to our students, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. McLean. The exams are slated to start the 14th of June, and that timetable is currently available on our website, and it should be also available through your local registrar. I saw Hector Stevenson online earlier, so all of that information should be available through your local registrar. The timetable for the delivery of results, if all things being equal, results should be ready by the end of September, given the time frame for submission of the various elements, both the SBAs and the completion of the papers. Now, if there are any further delay, that deadline for September, the ending of September for the release of results can be impacted, but we are monitoring and making sure we can do that. So as it relates to the start of the exam, it's June 14th. As it relates to the release of results, it is the last week in September that is currently on the table. But anything that changes that particular dynamics will impact the release of results. The completion, the next question was in relation to?
So, well, it's really just, I think the last question I had raised, sir, had to do with they still believing that the exam is unfair. So I wanted you to emphasize the deferral policy and the general support for the students.
Right. The consideration here is that if students, for whatever reason, they find themselves not being prepared for the examination, then the deferral option is available where they can either defer their exams to the January sitting or the May-June sitting of next year at no extra cost. In fact, if it is, it must also be noted that in January, only CSEC subjects are offered and not all of them either. It's just about 13 subjects given the challenges there with offering a full-blown set of exams during that period. So they will also have to be mindful of the limitations in January. But of course, in June of next year, June, July of next year, they will have the full suite of courses being offered. So the deferral option is to give them an opportunity if they decide that, listen, I'm not prepared to write all my exams this year. I also want to indicate that students can do a mixture of things. Students can either decide that, okay, given my level of preparation this year, I will write 4 of my exams and the other 4 in January if they're offered. Or I will write 2 of my exams now and the other 6 next year when those exams are being offered. So they can actually decide what set of exams they want to defer and when they would want to do it, whether January, depending on the subjects being offered in January, as well as June, July of next year. So they do have several options to pursue in that regard.
Okay.
Of course, at no extra cost to them,
All
right?
Let me ask you, Dr. Wesley, you mentioned that only 13 CSEC subjects will be offered in January. Are those subjects known already? Were they publicized?
Yes,
Okay.
those are subjects that are offered every year. They are known. The listing is available on our website.
Okay.
It covers mainly maths, English, the sciences, and sociology and some other subjects. So those subjects are really known by the schools.
Okay, well, within the context of all the changes, I just wanted to be sure that
Oh, no,
that
we
was
haven't
still the
changed any
same.
of those. Okay,
Okay.
yes.
Dr. Wesley, there are 2 other questions. One has to do with the queries and I suppose the appeals that were made for the last sit-in. Someone is asking when they will be provided with the results. If you could just give an update on that. And also someone is asking when will the certificates for 2020 be released?
Well, for those, the only certificates that are outstanding, and Teddy, you can provide the more specific details here, but the only certificates that might be outstanding at this time might be those who have requested a review, and if those were reviewed, those certificates are being printed now if they have not already been printed and sent to the local registrar for distribution. So those certificates, if they have not yet received them, should get them by early next month if they haven't received them already, particularly those who have asked for reviews. For those who have not asked for reviews, they should have received those certificates already.
Okay. And we have completed the review process, Dr. Wesley?
Yes, we have completed the review process as far as we are concerned. There are still a couple reviews that are outstanding, but those are outside of our control. If those SBAs are not submitted or not made available for reviewing, I guess some schools are still being impacted by the COVID-19 situation. So access to those SBAs in those schools has been challenging, and Hector is here. You could perhaps shed some light on that one, but for the most part, we have completed all the reviews that we have got.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wesley. Mr. Stevenson, would you like to comment on the distribution of the CSEC certificates and any other administrative matter?
Thank you, PS. Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Minister, CEO, Dr. Wesley, and parents and students and other persons present. The OEC has been distributing the certificates, CAPE and CSEC certificates, and the schools have been collecting. So we would like to advise that the certificates are here and are being distributed, and a number of schools have been collecting. In terms of the review, all that we have received at the OEC, and we had some challenges getting moderators to complete the process, but all that we have received, all the SBAs for review have been marked, and those have been submitted to the council. I think, though, we know that there are still some schools that requested reviews from whom we had not received SBAs. We have written about those. And I think CXC has brought the process to an end. It seems like Dr. Wesley is suggesting that if there are still SBAs out there, we might be able to get those in. But as far as we know, the process has been completed, and what we have received here at the office, that those have been marked and the results submitted to CXC.
Well, I'm not really suggesting that the process for submission is still open. I'm just saying if it is the case for Jamaica, because I know while we have completed all that we have received, I don't know if any of those that we were unable to get to because of the COVID-19 restriction and getting into schools. But for some of the other countries, that would have been the case. So if it is not the case for Jamaica, then certainly we would have completed all.
Right. Okay, thank you, sir. And just generally, PS, the OEC is in high gear in terms of our preparation for the examinations. We are going through our training of our supervisors. We are doing our standardization, preparing for the foreign languages. We are doing the assignments for the practical examinations. And as soon as we are told that the students can go back for these examinations, we're ready to go. We have our systems up and running, our contact center to be in touch with the schools, our IT department, our officers are all ready to ensure that this year the exams will go smoothly. We know it's going to be challenging. It's all papers to be done in the period that has been stated by the council. We're up to the challenge. We're working closely with the schools. We're meeting with our principals. We're trying to get the information out. And working closely, of course, with our parent ministry to make sure that the students can sit their examinations. I know there are concerns, there are some fears and so on, but we're going to do everything that is possible to make sure that these examinations are administered in the interest of the students, and that they're comfortable, and that they will be able to give a good account of themselves when they write these examinations later on. So if all systems go, ready and waiting to be able to administer these examinations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Chantal, you have a CXC question.
The CXC timetable shows that some subjects have their paper 1 sitting before paper 2. For example, biology unit 2. Is this correct in sitting paper 1 before paper 2? If changes will be made to the timetable, when will that be available to us?
Dr. Wesley.
You're not hearing me? You're not hearing me?
Hearing now.
Okay. Yes, there will be no change to the timetable. The timetables are as they are presented. Yes, the subject's timetable, if you see paper 1 before paper 2, that's how it would be administered. There is no error in that particular timetabling entry. So yes, paper 1 can be done before paper 2. And there are no schedule changes right now to the examination schedule as published on our website or through the OEC.
Okay. 2 other questions, Dr. Wesley, so remain right there.
Yes.
Who sets the criteria for deferrals, and is it the same across the Caribbean? That's the first one.
Well, we haven't set any criteria really for deferral. What we have offered is the facility of deferral, which is really the decision of the student to make a determination as to whether or not they are ready and feel prepared to write an examination. If for whatever reason they feel that they are not ready and prepared, then that option to defer is left to them. Obviously, there are other factors that they will have to consider because given what I've been hearing, some persons talking about the space for students who are deferring, how will they continue their preparation for next year? Those are some other factors to give consideration to. But from the examination standpoint, it's really giving the student giving the students an opportunity to make an assessment as to their readiness. If they are not ready, then the option is there for them to defer and give themselves sufficient time to be ready for the examination.
Okay, so Minister, I believe we could ask Dr. Troop just to speak briefly in terms of the guidelines that we give to schools regarding deferrals.
Okay, yes, we did give some guidelines in addition to the facility that Dr. Wesley spoke to earlier about the opportunity for a parent and teacher, students to come together to make a decision, an intelligent decision with respect to the readiness of the student to sit the exam. So we would have indicated to our principals that they need to look at the data in front of them. If, for example, a child has not been consistently involved in the teaching and learning experience, that information is very, very important to the decision of whether or not a child is ready to sit that exam. The level of completion for the SBA. If a child has not been submitting, has not benefited from any guidance from the teacher, has not turned in anything at all in terms of the incremental submission, that information, again, is relevant to the decision for deferral. If it is that the child is committed to the process, whatever program of intervention that is decided on to support the students to complete, if it's that the children and their parent is supportive of that and commits to that, then of course a decision again can be taken with respect to whether or not this child can sit. So those are some of the internal guidelines as it relates to their preparation, their attendance, their exposure to the content, their sense of readiness, their mental state. Psychologically this has been a traumatic experience for our boys and girls. And so we would have said to our teachers and our principals, put all these variables together. Sit with our students, sit with their parents, and make an intelligent decision in the best interest of the student with respect to the decision that they must communicate by May 1. And P.S., our parent would have called in recently on Nationwide and would have indicated that we would have said that May 1 is the timeline, and some schools would have given an earlier timeline. And yes, that is something that is normal. CXC will have its absolute deadline, but our principals and administrators will give an earlier deadline to give time internally for the administrative activities to be done. So there's no way all our boys and girls, 200 students, 300 students in an institution can submit at the deadline, the absolute deadline for the information to get into our local registrar to get to CXC. So it is normal that you may hear us speak of May 1, within which you need to have that final submission, but you will get an earlier deadline from your principals to give the school some internal administrative moments to make sure that the information is communicated to CXC accurately.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chu. Back to Minister, to PEP. Will PEP be face-to-face? How do we take the PEP in COVID-19? Our grade 6 students are still in the dark. Will schools open on Monday? And there is one about what provision is in place if a child has COVID-19 on the date slated for CSEC or PEP.
Lots of questions. You might have to repeat them
Yes,
again.
I will, Minister.
Okay.
So the number one, will PEP be face-to-face?
Yes. We don't have any facilities right now to do electronic testing for PEP, so it will be face-to-face, assuming that we're able to do face-to-face. Again, it's all going to depend on how the COVID progresses, how this health pandemic progresses here in Jamaica. As I said earlier on, we're working closely with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, even though we have set dates. But again, this is a health situation that we are in, and we have to abide by those decisions from our health professionals.
Yes. And this one is a big one, Minister. What provision is in place if a child has COVID-19 on the date slated for, I suppose it is all the exams?
Well, if a child has COVID-19, that child has to be kept at home, unfortunately. We would not be able to risk that child coming to do an exam, 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 Right. Okay.
You're right. We do have some processes internally, Minister, for those students. If it is that the child is really absent because of illness, we would have the experience of utilizing the grades that we are working with now, and also to reach out to our schools to see the profile of that student and to utilize that information to help with the placement. We would have had in the past students who have been absent from other exams. We would have had in the past students in the hospitals, and we would, in some cases, Minister, where the child is able to sit, we would have had the paper taken to the student in the hospital. So we are familiar with these circumstances, and our systems are set up to make the adjustment in the best interest of our boys and girls.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Troop. Thank you, Minister. Let me go over to Chantal now to see if we can get some of our students, especially who have been lighting up the chat, to really let us hear their voices.
We have Sharona Litmore. Please unmute your mic.
Hello, good afternoon. So it's not necessarily, it's a question. Okay, so the students last year were in school up until March, and they were allowed to sit one paper, but with the students this year have not been in school for an entire year, are supposed to sit both papers, and are continuing to learn right up until the exam, which about a week before the exam starts. We are supposed to not get any study break. What is being done to facilitate our concerns? Because it seems that the teachers and the government is simply just speaking to each other, but not listening to us as the students. We are worried because I personally do not think I am prepared for the exam, but I do not have the option to defer. You say it is an option, but when you defer, you have to resit the grade 11 year for the exams you are going to take. You cannot not go to continue the school year. You can't go on to sixth form. What about the students who want to go overseas or pursue other ventures that they cannot do because of this exam? I am not saying to cancel the exam entirely. That is not what I'm saying. But I am saying for you to take us into consideration when you are making these decisions, because it truly seems like you are only speaking to each other. We would like some clarity on what is happening, because I do not feel that what's happening is fair or just. The students last year got a better deal. And yes, the papers might have not been marked properly, but something has to be done where I don't break down every day thinking I'm going to fail because I'm not sure what's happening, or I'm still learning but still trying to study. I have to get up for school at 7. I have to finish homework, do SBAs, do all sorts of stuff while trying to prepare for the exam. I have to complete a literature book in 1 month before the exam. And this is our future. Yes, I guess it is a new thing for you guys because it isn't something that we've been going through for a very long time. But you guys are playing with our future. If I do not pass this exam, I will have to resit the exam. So something has to be done to take in consideration our feelings. Not feelings, our concerns and our mental health, because students are home.
Minister?
Okay, well, there are a number of issues there. Unpack it for me, Dr. True.
Yeah, Minister, I've heard the plea, very passionate plea. I hear the emotions, and I can understand what our students are feeling. I just want to remind our students that we really did try to do some due diligence before CSEC was able to take a decision with respect to this year's sitting. We had a series of consultations because we recognized that it would have been a difficult period for everyone. We were conscious at the time with respect to the difficulties that the sitting last year had with the validity and you know, the concerns with respect to the grades that our students got. That information was a part of the consultations that we had. We spoke with principals, we spoke with exam coordinators, we spoke with members of our national CSEC committee. We solicited the feedback of our the Jamaica Prefect Association. We solicited the feedback of the Student Council group in Jamaica, the National Student Council group. And all of this information, we actually also went to the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica. So we did a broad-based dialogue, just trying to get ideas, feedback into what would we put forward as Jamaica's position. When we looked at the options, many persons were not satisfied with the paper one and the moderated SBAs and the outcome of that. And so it never came up as a viable option, even though that is what was offered to the students who sat the exams last year. When we looked at all the other options, right, everybody agreed that the paper one was to be remain on the table, SBAs, and we had concerns about paper two. Jamaica wanted, and it is not a secret, out of our consultations that was informed by our student reps from the National Secondary Schools Student Council and from the Jamaica Prefect Association and from the NPTAJ, as well as our principals, we came up with a plan that we would have recommended to CSEC that the paper two be adjusted. That would have been what we wanted. And adjusted meaning that we would have reduced the number of questions as per normal to 50%. That is what our student bodies recommended as well, and that the exam topics would have been shared. When we went for the broader dialogue with respect to the regions, many persons had concerns about the offering that was done last year and that it would not be wise to go back to that approach, which had so many challenges. Also, when we looked at what was in front of us, the design of the exam, and Dr. Wesley's online PS could speak to that some more, the modifications that we wanted in line with the recommendations from our student representative could not be facilitated because of how the CSEC exams are designed. It's a profile, questions work together to arrive at a profile, and so when you reduce and remove those questions, it becomes very difficult to arrive at a fair and an accurate profile for our boys and girls. So the design of the exams made it a little bit difficult for us to get the reduction that we wanted for our boys and girls in line with the recommendations that we advanced on your behalf. So this is why we are here now, trying to see our best. We can make sure that when you get your grade, it is a valid grade, it's a reputable grade, and also to seek to support you in the best way that is possible to get you prepared for the exam. It's not ideal. We confess, we understand. It's not the best deal right now, but this is new for all of us, and we all have to just try and adjust. I just want to assure you that we have been listening. We are not here not thinking about you. For everything that we have been doing with CSEC and everything that our minister has done, and just this evening, you would have heard from her. It is out of the initiative of our minister. We were able to get CSEC to relent and to push back and to agree on another date for us to facilitate the SBAs for you to prepare some more. So we have been listening, we have been trying, and we are trying to balance it on all parts because we cannot compromise the validity of your scores. When you stand out there after this exam, we want you to stand and you can be compared with all the students who have ever done CSEC to know that you have arrived at a valid score. Internally, we have to strengthen our support systems to make sure that the psychosocial support is provided. And Minister, I'm listening, and this is something we're just going back to do to make sure that we can provide in the virtual space. And if it is that we have to do some small groups for our exam students, Minister, we will arrange that because, yes, the psychological impact is great and the psychological support is necessary. So we are hearing you and we are trying our best. We are not playing with your future. We understand the importance of your future. but we are limited because of the pandemic.
Yes, yes.
As well, I know I heard the student talk about the fact that the students last year would have gotten a break because of the way that they didn't have to do both papers. But again, you would have seen just the problems that resulted from that. We here at the ministry had many conversations with teachers, principals from all over Jamaica who were just mad. I don't know if I can use that word, but they were upset.
Yes.
At some of the results that their students got. Students who were going into the exam with, high marks. When the results came, they were at low marks. I mean, there was just a lot of problems with the exam last year and how it was structured. And we didn't want to go back there again this year. We haven't had that experience of last year.
Yes.
Many, Dr. Wesley is on. He can tell you how many exams were requested to be looked at or remarked, yes, regraded again, to the point where CXC had to commit to not reducing a grade. I mean, if you ask for a relook at your exam, yes, you wouldn't be made any worse off, right, for having done that. So it was a lot of effort after the exams were done and the results came out. There was a lot that we had to do to deal with all the questions and issues and concerns that came up. And having had that experience, we really did not want to repeat that.
Yes, it really has been a very difficult. Assured that we are working in your best interest at this. So it's amazing how the time has just gone by so quickly. So we're going to take the last 3 Zoom questions, and then we will close, as we also know that persons have to get home before the curfew is in effect.
So, yes, before we go to the questions, okay, I would have thought there would have been some CAPE students on as well, because, okay, but I don't know if there were any questions for CAPE.
I think there was one CAPE question I saw, Minister, which really was asking about when the IAs will be due, which would be the 30th, Dr. Troop, yes. That's the only CAPE question, but some of the questions would have been asking about both CXC and CAPE. That's the only CAPE questions I have seen. So if there's a CAPE question, we would be willing to take that question before we close, Minister. Sure. Chantal?
Kiana Johnson, you could go ahead and unmute your mic. Shamar Mondel. Shamar, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm actually not a student, but I'm an educator. Regarding the IA submissions, you said that it is for the 30th, but you didn't mention which month. Is it the 30th of June or the 30th of April?
Yes, June. The 30th of June.
All right, thank you so much. A follow-up question here. It's directed to Dr. Wesley. I have tried multiple times to get CAPE Pure Mathematics subject reports via multiple channels. I've called CXC, I've called Macmillan as well. I've emailed both entities. The last subject report that I'm able to access via the CXC store as well as the CXC Learning Hub is 2014. As a lot of educators will know, the CXC subject report is very important for us to understand what approach we should take in teaching different topics. But in that regard, for pure mathematics, we don't have any of the recent subject reports. They're simply 2014, and we have no idea how to get access to the others. I've emailed multiple persons from CXC regarding the matter. I've called CXC multiple occasions, Sometimes the calls just don't go through. Sometimes I'm transferred and it just gets cut off. Could you please direct me to somewhere or somehow that I can get access to these subject reports?
Just give me a minute there. I'm just trying to call an officer to find out what's the status, and I'll just report immediately. Just give me a minute.
Okay, Dr. Wesley.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Dr. Wesley is ready. Chantal, you can move to someone else.
Saskia Francis, you could go ahead and unmute your mic.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is that seeing that CSEC results are going to be out I have two questions, one for PEP, one for CSEC, because I have a grade 6er and a grade 11 child. Seeing that exam results for CSEC will be out late or sometime in September, if that's what I heard. Am I correct? Hello?
Yes, you have heard correctly, the last week in September.
All right, so for students who are leaving the CSEC stage to go straight into tertiary, because not all tertiary institutions you have to have CAPE, how will this be handled? Will these students not be able to get into tertiary education school this year? Will they have to wait until next year? Will they be accepted not knowing if they have passed the exam? That's one question. My other question is this. If you have a child in grade 6 who didn't do as well in the grade 4 PEP, that you are now using both grades, which is the grade 6 PEP and the grade 4 PEP and the ability that is to come. If this child, say, didn't score well in the grade 4 PEP, but gets, say, 90s or 100 in the ability test for May, is it still possible for that child to get his or her first choice to go to high school? Those are my two questions.
Dr. Chupu, take that one, Minister.
Okay. Those are two tough questions, Mommy. But as it relates to the transitioning, like last year, our tertiary institutions made some adjustment. I mean, you're aware that the grades were also delayed last year because of the pandemic. But our institutions also pivoted and adjusted their resumption dates. So chances are we'll have the classes starting in October. Some institutions will make some decisions, provisional decisions, based on how students would have been performing, especially for those who are doing CAPE. Some institutions will take the students with their Unit 1s and their CXCs and make decisions and offer placement into their institutions to those students ahead of the final grades. Other institutions will delay the start to make sure that the students are not left behind. It was done last year, and it will have to be done this year in light of what is happening with respect to the pandemic and the impact that it has had on our school system. So the students will not be left behind. All our institutions are prepared to make the adjustment. In fact, I think PSI can speak definitively for the University of the West Indies. They would have already indicated that they are willing to accept our students based on their Unit 1 grades and delay, as they know that the Unit 2 grades will be delayed until a later time. So,
and just to add to that, Dr. Troop, the Council of Community Colleges and the Teachers Colleges of Jamaica, these are groups that they review how we are progressing as it relates to the exit examinations, and they make their decisions for entry based on the release dates. So you are not going to be disadvantaged in any way.
Right.
PEP.
PEP. As it relates to PEP and placement, we're all aware of how we place our boys and girls. Students are ranked according to how they perform. And so students are able to get their first choice, second choice, third choice. In fact, there are 7 choices. And I know you are more interested in your first, second, and third choice. And so at the end of the day, what becomes available to a student with respect to the placement is how that child performs against the cohort of students. Students are graded and they are ranked, and then based on the demand for the institutions, they are awarded their places accordingly. So it is how the student looks when we look at the bigger picture and how they compare with each other that will determine that if they get their first choice as it relates to the demand for those places in the institution that you would have selected for your child. So those are the variables that will impact. So the students can do very well, but well comparative to how the other students would have done. And if those students outperformed and have those that particular school as is our first choice, then that will impact what is now available to the next child. So that's how it is done with respect to the placement, and it's electronic, and it is done externally to this Ministry of Education. And so once that is done and it is cleaned and conditioned and sent back to us, then we are able to release that data.
Okay, so Minister, well, some of the questions are actually repeat questions, but based on what I see going on in the chat and based on those questions from Facebook and Twitter, it appears as if, Minister, we will need to work with CXC especially to do just a question and answer sheet, just detailing some very simple questions that we can send to our schools, post on social media so that our students can access this information. So this is something that we are committed to doing. I also noted that a number of the questions persons responded to from CXC in the chat, which I think is really very good that those have been responded to. And we are just committed here in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to provide you with the information that can assist you in your preparation under these extreme circumstances. Minister, there is still anxiety regarding the students who are doing the science subjects, those who have the practical practical assessments to be done to complete their SBAs as well as for their practicals for the exam. And so we are also committed to follow up closely with the Overseas Examinations Commission so that we can provide the best opportunities for you to be able to sit your examinations under examinations conditions, and of course ensuring, as Dr. Troop has said, that your scores are valid and reliable. So I want to extend on our minister's behalf this evening, thank you.
There was a question, remember that question about the pure math? That
oh,
Dr. Wesley,
okay,
yes.
Dr. Wesley.
Yeah, I was just trying to get an update. I know they were behind with some of them, and that happens to be one of the subject that is behind. I would encourage that you use the latest one that is there now as a guide, but they are actually working on completing those years that are outstanding, and since we don't have those ready, we advise that persons continue to use the one that is there. I think he set up until 2014 it was,
yes.
That is there as a guide, because the others are still being worked on as we speak. There were some challenges, technical challenges there, and they are actually working on them. So my apologies in that regard.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Dr. Wesley.
Okay.
Question, can you provide a timeline as to when this will be completed?
Well, as I said, I just spoke to somebody who could not give me the precise completion time. So I will actually have to have that conversation tomorrow morning with the team to see how best we can expedite those. But as I said, it's going to be important that you at least pay attention to the one that is there now.
All right, thank you for that update. And one final question before we go. Regarding the module examinations for pure mathematics as well as accounting, CAPE accounting, are schools allowed to issue these online? Because regarding the government restrictions, no face-to-face classes and so forth, would it be possible for us to issue these examinations online?
If it is CXC offering the exams during examination time,
the module examinations, the
module is really it's a local activity with respect to the schools. So I think the schools will have to determine how best to administer that exams with the requisite security around it. So that is a function of the schools. CXC would not necessarily determine how that exam is administered, as long as the requisite protocols are followed.
Okay.
Thank you for that information.
Okay.
Yes.
And I believe Mr. Stevenson will provide some guidance for that as well, Dr. Wesley. So,
Yeah.
Minister, thanks for the reminder regarding that question. When our teachers ask these technical questions, it simply means that you are serious about your students and their progress.
Absolutely.
And we must commend you for those questions this evening that you have asked, teacher. So on behalf of our minister, of course our minister will do the final charge before we go, but let me just express sincere thanks to Dr. Wesley, Mr. Hector Stevenson, Mrs. Marva Duncanson, Mrs. Marva White, and all the ministry's officials who have been here supporting this activity. It is apparent that we'll have to do many more of these before we actually get to the exam dates. And of course, I have to express my sincere thanks to our Chief Education Officer, who is always on point, on target as it relates to providing the details that we require to ensure that we have the information that is required by our stakeholders. So, Dr. Troop, I'll give you quarter minute to do your final remark, and then Minister, I'll hand over to you for the closing.
Okay. Just want to say, PS, a big thank you to our stakeholders who really took the time to come and talk with us this afternoon. You know, we really value you. And I just want to reassure our boys and girls that we are really trying our very best to ensure that you can have a safe sitting of your exams and that the process will be fair to you. We are committed to providing the psychosocial care as you go into the final lap to sit your exams. I've heard the cry of our young lady this afternoon, and it has touched me personally, PS, and I'm going to make sure that my team gets ready to ensure that the psychosocial support is not something we can neglect at this time.
Yes.
And we recommit. We have started a series of empowerment sessions, and I want to publicly recommit to a series going forward as we prepare for the sitting. We know you don't want to defer. We know you don't want to delay, but we have limitations, and we are trying our very best, and we are asking everyone on board to come together in the best interest of the examination period.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. Minister?
Sure, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here this afternoon, in particular Dr. Wesley, Mr. Stevenson, Mrs. Duncanson, and Mrs. White for being here to answer the questions from our students. We want our students to know that this process has been a collaborative one. We didn't take the decision all by ourselves. Every step of the way, we reached out to all our stakeholders. We tried to balance everything within the context of this COVID-19 pandemic through which we're living. We know we have to keep you safe as well. As we think about your future, additionally. If we were able to make any better decision, we would have. But again, we continue to press on CXC, and you could see most recently they were able to accommodate in terms of the SBAs. They understood. We spoke. We took to them all the concerns, and they responded. We know it's not the best of situation right now. But we have been trying to make the best we can with what we have. We want to remind those who don't feel that they are ready to really consider the deferral option. I know it would be a tough decision for many students, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to go into the exam and not get the grades that you believe you deserve to get. We continue to work with you, and I'm sure we're going to have more of these sessions just to give you the opportunity to air your concerns, to ask your questions, to clarify information, and know that the ministry is here to serve, and we are serving in your best interest, not our best interest, your best interest. Yes. So thank you again, and God bless you. For those who have to drive to get to where they have to go to, please be safe on the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.